Audio's live. Hey everyone, welcome to the weekend edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me on this weekend edition of The Bullet, on my right, Tom Walls of the Firearms Academy Seattle, making a rare Saturday appearance for Tom. Down below me, Dan Waz. Dan, of course, of the author of a Good Gun, Bad Guy series of books. 3 of them are out. He's working on a 4th, but it's authors, man. It seems like they take forever to write a book. I can't say much because I don't write much anymore. And then, of course, Rob Morse, Self-Defense Gun Stories. The guy also behind the Slow Facts blog, and Rob writes about 50, 60 articles a day. And so,
if I've told you once, I've told you a million times. Don't exaggerate.
All right. Let's go ahead and get started here, guys, as soon as I get social media hooked up. And I do want to remind everybody, if you are watching on the Facebook or YouTube page for the Polite Society podcast, you can comment there. We'll get your comments on the air. If you're catching us anywhere else, as the scroll across the top of the screen says, go to Twitter and tweet with the hashtag #TheBullet. We'll get those comments and get them on the air as well. Guys, first 2 stories have to do with then this happened yesterday. I got the press release at 5 minutes before 5 Central Time as I was getting ready to push buttons. ATF dropped the pistol brace rule.
Right.
And it's basically, it's 193 pages of you can't do that. And it's just it's a rulemaking. It's not a law. So let me start with let me get just 1 second here, and I'm going to see if I can maybe make Rob flip around here quick. There we go.
Thank you, sir.
But anyway, we got a press release from SAF regarding that. Second Amendment Foundation today, and being yesterday, accused the Biden administration of once again trying to trample the rights of gun owners by allowing the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to adopt a final rule on arm braces for modern semi-automatic pistols. While the definition of a rifle in federal law should be clear, noted Chad Flores, who is representing SAF in a federal lawsuit filed 2 years ago that was stayed by the court in anticipation of this new rule. It is clear the Biden administration's new definition of a rifle ignores tradition. SAF sued ATF and the U.S. Attorney General in 2021 in a case known as SAF et al. Versus BATFE et al. According to SAF lawyers, the 291-page final rule by the ATF, the definition of a rifle now turns on a bewildering 6-factor test. This new definition can be controlled not by firearms' objective characteristic, but instead of by what ATF agents in D.C. think of a manufacturer's marketing materials or the firearms' likely use. The rule admits it's a dramatic result. Quote, under this new definitional regime, a majority of the existing firearms equipped with a stabilizing brace are likely to be classified as rifles. Guys, as I said, as I started going to this, it's 193 pages of you can't do that. So,
it's that, but it's, you and I've heard, heaven knows, we've got a number of people in elected office that spit out word salad all the time. This 100+ pages of word salad is particular because it says, oh, we have every right to regulate pistol braces because they're firearms. Really, honestly, dangerous. We really desperately need to regulate them. But it isn't a firearm, and that's why they're allowed to regulate it the way they're regulating it. Because if it were a firearm, of course, it would have to be described in law. But this is just an administrative thing that we can apply because this isn't really a firearm. They're protected under the Second Amendment, as recently ruled by the U.S. Supreme Court. Your turn.
If it's going to be considered a law, doesn't that have to be done by the lawmaking branch of the government and not a bunch of paid hired bureaucrats? That's obviously
yes, sir.
And haven't we been there recently with the court system and another issue?
We have.
West Virginia versus EPA. Yes, sir.
Yep. And let me put this comment up on the air. This is from a Facebook user. When you go, I broadcast this to several groups on Facebook. If you're in a group, it doesn't tell me who you are, but Facebook users write, ATF and other agencies aren't supposed to make laws. No, they're not. As part of the executive branch, they're supposed to be in charge of enforcing laws, not making them.
Something else I noticed, that is apparently they're supposed to interpret intent. Oh, well, you might want to use it for this, so your intent is, which there's a very nasty and crude joke about females in society being arrested for prostitution because they have all the required equipment. An interpretation on intent. I don't know how you would do that in any branch of the government.
Dan, have you had a chance to look at this rule?
This is the ATF carrying water for its political masters. This will be challenged. They're hoping, now who that would be, I forget which Supreme Court justice hears appeals directed from Washington, D.C. It's one particular justice.
Sotomayor.
And who?
Sotomayor.
Paul?
That could be.
Okay. Then that's right, because of D.C., right. So what will she do with it? And is this dovetails with another case. I haven't even checked enough in the show notes to see if we're going to cover it. A number of New York and New Jersey laws have been questioned. The ones in New York, the Second Federal District Courts of Appeals just basically said, oh yeah, I understand that we've seen 100-page objections from lower courts. That's fine. We'll leave those laws in place until the trial's done. What the U.S. Supreme Court said is, that's really sketchy, but you should at least give plaintiffs, that's us, the right of expedited appeal, meaning get them an answer tomorrow. Dan, you're one of the victims of that.
Yeah. As far as I know, Supreme Court's about ready to step in on that, on the New York one. And as far as the pistol brace thing, it's frustrating more than anything that the ATF is creating, like you said, creating laws. So all this stuff is going to end up in court. And I think Rob nailed it. I mean, I think it's going to get defeated, but it takes so much time and energy and money to defeat these things that it's frustrating. That's all. It's really frustrating. But I don't think it's going to go. I don't think it's going to go very far. I mean, how could it? Especially when we have all these new lawsuits popping up with the Bruin precedents of historical tradition and all this stuff. So it just makes it. We're always spinning our wheels in the mud, and it's just it takes a lot of time and effort on our part. But we have to keep fighting, of course, and I know we will. So.
You gentlemen, I think I'm with some like-minded individuals. I would love to hear from our listeners on this comment. It seems to me that the government is now making the assumptions. They get to make all the rules they want. It's not that they say they have the right to make them. It's that they have the power to make them, that we are guilty until proven innocent in a court of law. If you want your rights, best bring a couple $1 million and a lot of lawyers.
Bravo.
Yeah, well, there was Gavin Newsom in California, they're pushing this thing, this potential law that says that if you take up a firearm lawsuit and you lose, then the loser has to pay the state expenses, which could be anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. And what they're doing is they're trying to do this so they can deter people from bringing these lawsuits, because they know that things are changing now, and there will be a lot of lawsuits coming on some of these states.
Yeah, and Dan, I don't know how closely you followed it, but we did, a week and a half ago, that portion of the California law was shot down. The fact that if you lost even 1 point of a 30-point lawsuit, that the state, you'd have to reimburse the state. That got shot down. It's no longer is applicable.
And I know that the judge was talking about shooting that down, but I'm glad to hear from you that he did. So, okay, excellent. Thank you.
Let me get a comment in here quick. Again, from a Facebook group, so it's Facebook user. Suppressors, silencers aren't firearms either. It's also an accessory, if not a safety device. Similarly, the brace, if used by a disabled person, makes it a safety device as well. Yeah, suppressors, I'm going to say 100% are safety devices. The pistol brace, yeah, if it's used by a one-armed person, a disabled person with one arm, 100%, or even they still have the other arm, but like me had a stroke and a more severe one, and so they cannot hold a two-handed grip on a firearm. That is absolutely a safety device.
I happen to know a gun owner who has one arm, and I'm sure that people in that situation would not appreciate this sort of thing. I mean, why can't they be allowed to defend themselves just like everybody else? We have handicap ramps, we have wheelchairs, we have things like that to help people who may not have the same capabilities that we do. How can these people create such a law that debilitates handicapped people?
Dan, one thing that strikes me also is the fact that personally I have never known this to be a problem. The idea of a pistol brace being somehow misused as a shoulder stock. Aren't we electing our officials to solve existing problems rather than make them up? I'm hoping that will
That's a good point.
My day job before I retired to pay for my ammo for my chosen avocation was working in the medical field. And evidence-based medicine is the mantra. I mean, if you have an existing problem, you address it. Why are they trying to make this stuff up? Which is a leading question from me.
Well, because it's the enforcement that's what they're really going for. It's not necessarily look at any of these laws and look at like what they're trying to push now. And I'm writing some stuff on this. We had this 6-year-old kid who took a gun into school, shot the teacher, and as soon as that happens, the entire anti-gun crowd goes crazy about locking up your guns. Well, if you go back, I think it was not even a month ago, Joe Biden did some sort of press conference or interview or something, and he said, and one more thing we need to do is these gun storage. We need a gun storage law. So coincidentally, of course, Joe says this, and then coincidentally this thing happens, and that they're going to use this to push for their gun storage laws. So to what you said, Tom, yeah, let's create the problem because it's the enforcement. Can you imagine gun storage laws as a nationwide law? It's not necessarily the idea that you'd have to keep your gun locked up in a safe, but who's going to inspect it, and what's that inspection process going to be like? That's what scares me. So it's the enforcement of the law that I'm more concerned with than the law itself.
And we might have laws against storing classified documents in garages or something like that too. But anyway, I get to a couple comments here. Alex Uli is tuning in today. Alex is Tom's every other Friday compadre. It's one Friday it's Tom, the other Friday it's Alex Uli. Alex jumped in and commented, the federal government has been ignoring the 10th Amendment for quite some time, and then he went ahead and added the 10th Amendment. Powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution or prohibited by it to the states are reserved for the states respectively or to the people. I'm certainly, and I say this every time Alex is on, I'm not an attorney, and I'm not as smart as Alex is. Let me get one more comment in here, too.
The issue isn't, to my mind, again, one of justice, but of power. And in the case Dan was mentioning, I believe that was Judge Roger Benitez, euphemistically called Saint Benitez in Southern California. He includes the district of San Diego where I used to live. But okay, from there it will go to a 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit. Probably might even be affirmed. Then if it is affirmed, it will go to the Ninth, where it will be, if nothing else, delayed interminably. So, wow.
I want to get this comment in here real quick. Facebook user, again, Facebook user is very busy today. One might think that there can be an ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, based lawsuit against this ruling, too. I really wish Alex were on the air today, because that would throw directly at him.
Okay, Alex, you're listening. Comment.
There has to be a loss, right? There has to be a loss for
someone has to have standing, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And what constitutes standing, we recently found out, is different in different districts.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do want to move on because we're almost 20 minutes into the show. I want to get our next story in, and this one is almost the same story, but in 2 separate states. I'm going to put this up on screen. A letter from the Washington State Sheriff's Association. And I'm just going to synopsize this. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it is fairly long. But basically they're saying Jay Inslee can ask for all the anti-Second Amendment laws he wants to. It's up to sheriffs to decide what is going to be enforced. And as of this morning, when I looked, 31 sheriffs in Illinois have said essentially the same thing. We've got a new assault weapons ban. That does not mean that we're going to enforce it in X, Y, or Z county that is south of Chicago.
Right. Yep. We saw similar things in Oregon. We saw similar things in Washington State. What a gross abuse of power, because sheriffs are, you know what? Sheriffs meet the needs they see on the street. It may surprise you that sheriff's department are the #1 purveyor of emergency mental health services, because we've so crippled our mental health structures. You know, a guy needs a bed. He's going through a schizophrenic break. They can't put him on the street. They have to dedicate sheriff's deputies to watch them. They know where society is hurting, and they're saying, pistol braces? AR-15s? Are you kidding me? Not on the top of their list.
You know, and I just, my brain's a little slow. I'm going back to the evidence-based medicine and the problem solving based on real problems.
Thank you, Tom.
Part of the assault weapons ban in Illinois is, and they did this recently in New Jersey, and it's been done before in California, is a 50 caliber ban. I want to know when the last time somebody took down a 7-Eleven with a Barrett.
Let me think through that one. Well, it happening to Firearms Academy of Seattle. Where am I pointing?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you are.
We are. I understand that any opinion I give is not the opinion of the Firearms Academy of Seattle. It's the opinion of Tom. However, living in a rural county in Washington State, we've got a really good sheriff. Rob Snaza has been around and has been foursquare pro-gun. He's a little less likely to go out and make the public statements. Immediately south of us in Cowlitz County, the former sheriff and both the current sheriff there have been foursquare for Second Amendment rights, and one actually had a letter published in one of the NRA magazines. So the rural counties are on board. The problem is the political power lies on Puget Sound with Seattle, Tacoma, and on the far eastern end of the state with Spokane. But if you look at a map, it's a bunch of red between a couple of splotches of blue. What the legislature pushed through a couple of years ago was a legal definition in the state of Washington defining what an assault weapon was. So that vague, squishy term that's been thrown at us for a few decades now had a legal definition. And people hear the word assault and they hear violence. They defined for us in the state of Washington an assault weapon as a semi-automatic rifle. That includes the little Ruger 1022 that you gave your grandkid. And now with a legal definition that most people don't understand, they'll say, oh, assault weapons will go wherever that herd of sheep is led. That's right. Part of the lie. That's a long-term strategy if you look at it. And fairly well.
Give it to him, Dan. I can hear you already. Control the language.
Oh, go for it.
I've always, thanks, Rob. I've always said, these laws, the only way these laws get pushed through is because they get support of people who don't know any better. And exactly that whole so-called assault weapons term and gun violence and weapons of war and you name it. High capacity magazine, all this stuff is created just to scare people, and then and even scares the politicians. So some of them believe this nonsense, and so then they get the support for this gun legislation. I was just thinking, we're talking about that Phil Murphy from Jersey, when they were talking about I think it was a 50 caliber ban. I think it was a 50 caliber ban or something like that, and he was saying that we need to go through with this because this type of round can take down a helicopter. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, that's going to scare the hell out of people who aren't thinking for themselves. But when was the last time you saw Jersey residents shooting down helicopters? It's so ridiculous. But
exactly. Where's the actual need?
There's no need. Exactly, Tom. That's what you were saying before. There's no need. So they create this false need along with all this hype and propaganda like Rob was talking about, the assault weapon and all this stuff, and you get support for gun legislation. It's easy because people are stupid. They're not paying attention. They just don't know any better.
All right, let me Rob, okay. You asked and Alex answered. We've got we've got
what a team.
Comments from Alex about the ADA. He says, I'm not an ADA expert, but I'm not sure it would apply here. He then followed up with ADA prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities in several areas, including employment, transportation, public accommodations, communications, and access to state and local government programs and services. So,
self-defense is not listed.
No, it's not.
Thank goodness for 2A media, and I include, gentlemen, all of you in that, me less so. We defend ourselves with a long gun? Oh, an assault weapon. What, some 300,000 times a year? Most of those in our home. It dwarfs any other harmful effect that we've seen, including the horrific things like mass murder, including the crazy guy shooting out of a window in a Las Vegas casino. But that's never brought to the attention of the public, except by the people I'm talking to and our colleagues. Thank you. We're speaking. I wish the public did listen better. You're right, Dan. They would have a more balanced view if they listened to you guys more.
Well, Rob, and I gotta give you credit. You're the one who made me aware of. I think it was the Georgetown University study that showed 1.67 million defensive gun uses per year in America, and I was fascinated by that, because you got to think that that's a liberal think tank, some of these colleges, and if they're coming up with those numbers, it doesn't quite meet the CDC's 2.46 million defensive gun uses, or the CLEC study, which was 2.5 million defensive gun uses. But still, when you get a university that comes up with that kind of number, 1.67 million defensive gun uses, there's something going on here. There's something wrong here when all the anti-gun crowd has is this one piece of information that says 30-some thousand of so-called gun violence or gun-related deaths. So they're going on that. They're banking on that 30,000 gun-related deaths, and they're not even getting all the information over here that's showing 1 million plus defensive gun uses, used to save lives. They don't have all the information, and they're not listening to us. So, sometimes, we have to help them understand this stuff.
We need to give them information.
Yeah.
Do you watch a TV show that says, well, nothing happened today, we'll just go to commercial? They've got to have something to show. And they always step back. It doesn't even get reported. So good on those universities and studies for doing that. But the other side sees this. They're pushing their agenda. And I don't want to see kids killed either. But when you're saying that the leading cause of death in children is guns, define children. We all know that. You look at little kids like my grandkids. They're not at risk. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 when you start to get into gang violence, and that's where most of that is. But children is an emotional word, and they're playing on that. And otherwise, good, decent people that don't want to see little kids hurt at all are getting wound up by this change. Again, it comes back to definition. How are we defining child? We need to get the anti-gun folks to understand why we say what we say. We need to give them that info.
Well,
Tom, that's a great point. Let me just jump in real quick. One real thing I want to just piggyback off of what Tom said. That's true. And a lot of these studies, they will include up to 18 years old, and some studies even include up to 21 years old. And they take these studies a lot of the times from inner cities. So you're talking about gang-related stuff, and they're calling it child gun death.
Well, and now let's also... you can be a child and be on your parents' health care plan until you're 24 years old.
Wow.
When are they cutting off children? Is it really cutting off at 18 years old? Are they extending it to 21? Are they extending it beyond 21?
I want to toss up a different perspective that I find very meaningful. Half of all of our counties will not have a murder. I didn't say a murder with a firearm. They won't have a murder of any kind. Not a car, knife, gun, nada. Violence is localized. It's so localized that only 2% of our counties will produce more than half of our murders. But unfortunately, our media and also a lot of our entertainment comes from our big cities, our failed big cities. Guys, Tom, where you live, Dan, where you live, you see major market media and your neighbors think, wow, we have those problems next door. No, they're not.
Right.
We live halfway between Portland and Seattle, where stuff has been happening, especially back in 2020 with the riots and the Antifa and the Chad zone, That's happening there. I don't go to those cities anymore. It's depressing. Went to school in Seattle, lived there for years. It was wonderful in the 70s. It's a crap hole now. Won't go back. I don't want to shatter that memory.
You take out there's 4 cities. If you took out of the mix, the gun-related deaths go down to almost nothing. You take out Chicago. I forget. It's like 4 or 5 different cities: Chicago, Detroit, Newark maybe, and D.C. So, Rob, you're right. They make it look like it's happening in your neighborhood, in the cul-de-sac.
Right
at the backyard barbecue.
Well, they've got to keep you watching through the commercials, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Their job is to sell airtime. They've got to have something for you to watch.
For 30 years, and I say this goes back to where I was in school and interned at a TV studio where we did local news. It's still true. If it bleeds, it leads. They do not get viewers. They do not. They have to justify their existence, and so if they don't have viewers, they're not going to get advertising money.
Yeah, they want to scare the hell out of Sally Soccer Mom.
Yes.
So they're going to push the emotional buttons, and they're really good at it. Guys, we have to admit, they're really good at it.
They are.
Yeah.
But think of it. Isn't it sad that that's literally the job of a newscaster? How can I jack up my audience so that they'll watch through 180 seconds of a product they don't need? I just dug up the stats because I happened to touch them recently. There we go. If you compare murders where even more than 15 people were killed, horrible mass murder. The U.S. is safer than Africa, Australia, and Israel. We're safer than France and Mexico, where honest citizens are disarmed. If you compare U.S. states with European countries, then Norway, Washington, D.C., and Belgium are the most dangerous states. Florida, Germany, and Italy are the safest. We're boring, and boring doesn't sell laxatives or whatever they're selling on TV these days.
Well, we're burned up half the show. I want to keep moving here a little bit, guys. I'm sorry, but next story I've got up, Supreme Court ruled this week on the New York Concealed Carry Improvement Act. Basically, the ruling was, let's let this play out. And by the way, Second Circuit Court of Appeals, get a move on. Make this happen. We want to see results, and then we'll rule on it. So,
the U.S. Supreme Court is reluctant to issue rulings without all the facts laid out in front of them. And there were rulings based on essentially summary judgment. Plaintiffs in New York State said, "What? I can't have a gun in my own car? That's absurd." A judge writes a 184-page brief that says, "This law sounds absurd." The Second Circuit Court of Appeals says, I think it was 4 sentences. We'll let this stand till after the trial is done. There's no clear indication that this would cause irreparable harm. What, you just disarm people in public? Have you been out of your ivory tower recently, Judge? So, wow, we're in a hard place.
Yeah. In New York State previously appointed Governor Hochul. She got shot down by judges at least 4 times, maybe 5 times, telling her that the Concealed Carry Improvement Act was unconstitutional. And then we have this situation now where, it's still technically in effect, even after it's been shot down. And so maybe you guys know more about what's happening with Judge Sotomayor. Are they going to be reaching down into the lower courts to take this on? Do we know? I know there was talk about it.
Well, I think this ruling last week, they're a little reluctant to do that, simply because with that Second Amendment case, it's obviously heading for them anyway. They want the Second Circuit to be able to do what they do, but in that same ruling, they said they expected the Second Circuit to expedite it. So I don't think we're going to be waiting 5, 6, 7 years for this. I very much expect we're going to have a ruling in the New York. I would guess by summer, but certainly within a year.
Contrast that with what we saw in Oregon, where a number of judges said, no, I understand you put a constitutional amendment in place through a citizens initiative. You should have written it better. It's unconstitutional. It's all void. There. That's my ruling. Now go fight it out in court with that as a standing.
In the state of Washington, we have the initiative process, which creates some incredibly poorly written laws that are winding their way through the courts now, but it takes years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me get a comment in here real quick. Matthew over on the Facebook side says, going back to your comment, Rob, says, speaking of stats, standards I've heard they use for school shooting, they include gangs shooting by adults against in a school parking lot of a school at 10 o'clock at night as a school shooting.
Definitions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, Matthew, you're right. And if you look on various gun violence archive websites, they'll include stuff like that. See, another school shooting. As Tom rightly points out, definitions are critical.
Well, and those same websites will. I remember that when the Boston Marathon bomber assumed the room temperature challenge, they listed him as a gun violence victim because the police shot him.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
That's where they're getting us.
yeah.
And when I was working as a reserve police officer, my rifle was my patrol rifle. When I brought it home, it was my assault rifle. I don't get it.
It's definitions, man. That's what it is. Speaking of definitions, speaking of the other side, we got word, and I wish I still had it loaded up. When I did this on the bullet earlier in the week, it's since been recycled and no longer in my broadcast software. But I had a clip from Steam from the 1970s singing "Na na na na, hey hey hey, goodbye,
hey, goodbye."
But Shannon Watts has announced she's retiring. The New York Post did a glowing article on her, and there's been articles on our side about her coming retirement. The one I agree with the most, guys, is, look, she has done nothing other than be a highly paid and highly surgically modified mouthpiece for the other side. What are we going to get? We could get something much worse when she steps aside. It's not really good to cheer that she's gone, but there has been a lot of cheering.
I think what's useful from our... Go ahead, Dan.
I'm sorry. She blocked me a long time ago.
That's a badge of honor right there.
You and just about everybody in the pro-gun side. If you have not been blocked by Shannon Watts, you're just not doing something right.
Those are still rookie numbers. Come on. People on our side basically called her a propagandist, and that's accurate. She has to distort reality to say the things she said. Will they find another liar to take her place? Oh, absolutely. With money that Bloomberg can throw around, they can find a lot of liars.
Yeah.
Dan, you want to comment on the incoming departure? Anything you want to say about her?
Shannon Watts?
Yeah.
No, I don't know what else to say. Rob nailed it. She's a propagandist, I think is really what we all started to see her as. And but they'll find somebody else. They'll find somebody, maybe even, well, she wasn't that good of a speaker anyway. So they'll probably find somebody even better than her. So this is the way it goes. They're going to continue to try to squash our rights, and we're going to continue to fight them back. This is a fight that's not going to end. So whoever it is, bring them on.
The one thing Shannon was good at. Go, Rob.
Aren't there some unemployed talking heads at CNN and MSNBC that Bloomberg could tap?
Well, Cuomo, not.
Oh.
I'm talking the former governor of New York. He might be a good one to go in for that. But one thing Shannon Watts was really good at is going to the NRA show with 15 people and choosing camera angles to make sure it looked like there was a whole lot more than what was actually there.
Mm-hmm.
She was really good at that. But other than that, apparently they are claiming mommies are claiming responsibility, or claiming, that's a terrorism word, but it works here too. They're claiming responsibility for Delaware's new gun control laws. They're saying it's because of us these things happened. Well, does that mean, Shannon, that you're going to go ahead and pay the Delaware's share of what they have to pay the SAF when we win against them in a civil rights lawsuit?
Yeah, and what happens when somebody gets killed in a gun-free zone where Shannon Watts lobbied for the law, for a law in that state? Does she take responsibility for those people who die? The hypocrisy of her. She was really just a clown. I think she did what she was told. She was pretty good at it. And but no responsibility at all. We're here trying to help people become armed, armed citizens so they can protect themselves and their families. These people are trying to disarm everybody so they become vulnerable victims. I don't know how they sleep at night, and it's probably a good thing that Shannon Watts is gone. And I'm sure she had a lot of stress because she had a lot of opposition from the pro-gun side. It was not easy for her. She was hated, but so it's probably she's probably very happy that she's not going to be doing this anymore.
I don't know how much hate she could have when she has all of us blocked.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Well, Dan, there's one more thing to add to that. I was looking up here on the side when Mom's Demand started getting really vocal and demanding was about 10 or 11 years ago with Sandy Hook. And from my instructor hat being put on, in the last 10 years, we have seen a dramatic shift in the demographics of students we get in our introductory classes entering the gun culture. We were 10 years ago, off the top of my head, maybe 20% female in our introductory classes, and their general reasons would be listed as, I'm here with my boyfriend, my dad made me, those sorts of things, not interest of their own. It was, go along to get along. Now we're seeing consistently 50% or more in our introductory and now into our intermediate level classes, and reasons like, can't depend on the police to get there in time. Have you looked at what society we're in? I'm a teacher and I want to take care of my students. Occasionally we'll get those. So I think the original mission of Mom's Demand is going to have to change to meet the current situation where more and more women are now finding out the truth by participating in the gun culture and seeing what we really are.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, what do they do from a marketing perspective at that point when they realize that their main audience is essentially turning on them? How do they spin that? How do they change that? And so I wonder if who they bring in is going to be a representation of exactly what you're talking about, Tom. I think that's a really good point.
I would choose someone from law enforcement. There's a sheriff formerly in Santa Clara County, I believe, who is now available.
Until she actually goes through criminal courts, she'll be available.
Right. Well, I don't think she's going to jail. She may pay some fines.
I would bet it would be, if that happens, and that's an excellent idea, really, for them to do. I would bet it would be a police chief, not a sheriff. The chiefs being appointed by a political entity rather than the elected sheriff.
Much easier.
I think you make a great point that, law enforcement would be. Hope you're not watching there, Mom's Demand, because that would be a good move for you.
Yeah.
Well,
they're not watching. We're giving them ideas.
Watching, maybe not, but on podcast, our biggest area of downloads, I can dig down and I can go right down to what cities are downloading the show.
Wow.
And Washington, D.C. is the #1 city that downloads the podcast for this show. So, not.
I would have just lost a bar bet.
I'm going to skip around a little bit. We got 2 stories left, but I want to handle the one at the bottom of the list first, simply because this one's interesting to me. This one off Breitbart.com. Representative Richard Hudson introduced national reciprocity for concealed carry in the 118th Congress Monday night. The legislation, H.R. 38, also known as the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act, has a bipartisan group of 118 co-sponsors. H.R. 38 would make concealed carry permit of any one state valid in the other 49, just like a driver's license. He commented on the legislation saying H.R. 38 guarantees Second Amendment does not disappear when crossing an invisible state line. It protects law-abiding citizens' rights to conceal carry and travel freely between states without worrying about conflicting state codes or onerous civil suits. I'm especially proud to have such widespread and bipartisan support for this measure as I continue working to get this legislation over the finish line. Before I open up to my commentators here, I got 2 things I want to say about this. There are a lot of people that are going to say, look, that's a states' rights issue. That's nothing the federal government should be in. The second thing I'm going to say about it is, will this pass the House? Most likely. Will it pass the Senate? Possibly. Will the president sign it? The chances of that are slim and none, and Slim just left town. So,
but it's interesting. There was a Second Amendment caucus. I believe Congressman Massey was the head of it. In that caucus, they never proposed this when Republicans were in power. But Hudson did. Hudson couldn't get it past the Republicans in Congress. So he's done this before. I wonder what's going on behind the scenes.
I'm sorry, Rob. I was looking back just to the history. Richard Hudson's been proposing this since, the 114th Congress, which was 2015.
Yeah.
And it keeps dying in committee and dying in committee. And if memory serves correctly, correct me if I've got this wrong, but both the House and the Senate passed it during the Trump administration, and Mr. Trump didn't sign it.
The House did, I believe.
No, the Senate did not.
Yeah, help me out here. Have we got that wrong? Okay.
I think it failed to pass the Senate. I think. And what do you?
Thank you, Mitch.
Let me open this up, guys. I want to go to the first part in that states' rights. Do you believe that for example, I have, and let me get my wallet out here, my South Dakota enhanced permit, and I just remembered that I had the card right here. I am good in, goodness, I'm going to say 40 states. I'll actually show it to the camera right there. The red states are the only states that I'm not good in with just my South Dakota enhanced permit. And by the way, when I go to Washington, notice Washington is blue, which means I can carry in Washington State, Tom. I'm wondering if is there a argument to be made that, look, Washington State, Oregon, South Carolina have their own standards that they can pass, and if my permit doesn't meet those, tough luck. Is there a states' rights issue argument here?
Do the states have the right to infringe on their citizens' gun rights? I mean, the whole thing is wrong, because states should not be implementing this type of infringement to begin with. It's a shame that we got to start talking about a federal law that keeps the states under control and frees up the Second Amendment right for the states. I just don't think we shouldn't have any of this. We shouldn't have a government issued permission slip to carry a gun. This whole notion is ridiculous. But do the states have the right to is it states' rights thing? No, the states still don't have the right to infringe on the citizens' Second Amendment. Am I looking at this wrong?
Well, no, but there's. Let me offer yet another point of view. They recently said, look, if another state defines marriage as between a person and a puppy dog, you have to acknowledge that. You have to recognize those contracts. Okay, my state has said I have a concealed carry permit. Why won't you recognize that relationship? So what we do for marriage, we're not going to do for the right of self-defense. I don't believe that marriage appears in the Constitution at all, whereas the right to keep and bear arms does.
That's exactly the point, Rob. You nailed it, yeah.
Now, that's even a better argument, I think, than the old my driver's license is good all around the country. I think that would be certainly a more emotional issue, and it's on the same moral level. Yeah.
Yeah. And let me bring this up. If this thing were to pass, and again, chances of it passing in the next 2 years are right next to zero. It would have to go in an omnibus bill that Biden could not refuse to. So that's how he got national park carry from Obama. Is that went into an omnibus bill. I believe that particular one was a National Defense Authorization Act, and he couldn't not sign that. That would have to be how this gets through, and I don't see it happening. But
an omnibus bill, not with the new House rules.
If this does go through and get signed by this president or the next one or the one after that, given that we've got 25 states right now that have permitless carry, and you do not have to have a permit to carry inside your state, I'm going to say that this is a Firearms Trainers Full Employment Act, because everybody who leaves their state is going to want to have a permit.
Ooh.
That's just it. Just be able to travel. Yeah.
Well, then again, if you're going to require training, who sets the standard for training?
Oh yeah, I absolutely.
You have to have training. You have to have training to vote. Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, that all depends on the amount what they're saying for that you would need for training. But let me get Roderick's comment in here real quick. This one just popped. States do not have rights. States have power. Section 1 of the 14th Amendment applies the first 8 amendments to the states. Section 5 of the 14th gives Congress the power to enforce Section 1. God, I wish Alex was here. Again, I'm not an attorney, so, and I'm certainly not a constitutional law expert. So, and by the way, Roderick, thanks for chiming in, man. I actually got to meet Roderick at GRPC this past year. So, all right. Well, let's see. I think we got one more story I want to cover here. Wyoming. A man in Watipee, Wyoming, who wants to make machine guns is suing the U.S. government for denying his application to do so, saying a federal anti-machine gun law violates his Second Amendment right. Jake Stanley DeWild filed a federal complaint in the U.S. District Court for Wyoming last week, asking the circuit court to issue a declaration against U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland and the director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, known by Joe Biden as the AFT. DeWild's argument says that on December 8th, he submitted an ATF form asking to make and register an M16 machine gun, but 12 days later, the ATF denied it, citing federal law that forbids both the transfer and possession of machine guns manufactured after 1986. Guys,
Yep.
This guy's here's the danger. This guy is representing himself. He is not an attorney. I really wish he'd have at least found a pro bono attorney for this.
Yeah, because you get something like this overturned, and you are hero. You are the hero, because and he's absolutely right, because I don't remember the Second Amendment saying, the right of the people to keep and bear arms unless your gun is really extra shooty. It's not in there.
Really extra shooty. That's the quote of the day. Unless your gun is really extra shooty.
Well, okay, the ATF just said, hey, if you have a police department that wants fully automatic weapons and you're going to buy them for them, I know you're a gun store, you have an FFL. We want to see the letter from the police department that says they want this, because we think you're just getting these full autos in your shop because they're fun to play with. Wait a minute. You're saying that the police can have weapons of war, but I can't? I'll remind you that individual citizens see a lot more criminals than the police do. We are the first responders. We're the first victims, which is perhaps a better description, right, Tom?
And Rob, I want to add to that. Police officers are nothing other than citizens as well.
Good point.
They are not soldiers.
Well,
Tom, go.
And police officers are using those firearms, fully automatic, select fire, to protect citizens from the same criminals that we protect ourselves against as first responders. So, again, why is it good with that group of people and not with us for the same threat? I can't see the argument holding together in a solid debate.
I absolutely agree. And I certainly wish Mr. DeWild luck on his lawsuit. He's going to need it because U.S. attorneys have a lot of experience.
Unfortunately, he doesn't know what he doesn't know.
Well put. What did Benjamin Franklin say about a person that represented himself in court?
Yeah. I believe the exact quote is I believe it was going for attorney.
As an idiot for a lawyer, right?
Yes. An attorney who represents himself as an idiot for a client. We're just about to the top of the hour, so let's start shutting things down. Tom, I'm going to start with you because you're on the top right. What's coming up? We're the middle of the month of January. You guys are going to start cranking up the end of the month. What's coming up at the Firearms Academy of Seattle?
We've got Steve Fisher coming for 3 separate days toward the end of the month. Rifle, shotgun, and pistol. We've got our regular program starting up in February. I know that because I'm on it. The best thing I can say is my weekends are planned for the next 12 months. Check out our website, firearmsacademy.com.
All right. We're going to continue going clockwise here. Rob, tell us about Self-Defense Gun Stories. Tell us about your blog. Tell us about anything else you want to plug, bud.
You just did a good job of covering the places to find me. I wrote an article at Slowfax. The tragic Uvalde School Police Chief Pete Arredondo finally came out and spoke to the press. He said the reason he didn't let police officers in the building was he basically gave up on the kids. While the attacker was still shooting children, he said, "Oh, I think it's too late. It's now just a hostage situation. We should evacuate the rest of the school." Okay, that's a bad decision. But what's fascinating is, why is it a bad decision? If we don't learn from it, then we are doomed to repeat those mistakes again. The article's called Emotions, Police Chief, Celebrity Murders, Why We Need to Plan Ahead. That's at slowfacts.wordpress.com.
All right.
Dan.
Yeah, Dan, what do you want to plug today, man?
Well, I'm writing a lot for AmmoLand. You can check me out at ammoland.com. The Good Gun, Bad Guy book series is available. I urge people to get it. goodgunbadguy.com. goodgunbadguy.com. And then also the Loaded Mike Show is my web show. Just got picked up by OpsLens and Right America Media and a bunch of others. So goodgunbadguy.com and loadedmike.com.
Very, very cool. On my end, this is going to wrap up the broadcasting week for the Bullet. We'll be back next week, Monday. I'm not doing SHOT Show, so Monday through Friday next week, 5 p.m. Central Time. At the very least, I will be here to give the news of the day and commentary. I'm hoping to have somebody with me every day. Whether that actually happens, because I think everybody but me and maybe Tom is going to SHOT Show. And Rob, I think you're going to be, at least Monday night for Polite Society, you'll be with me. So,
Yes, sir.
But do come join me next week, 5 p.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday for the Bullet. And next Saturday, let me get my calendar up here because my memory is just horrific. But next Saturday, we're going to have a really cool Bullet at this time next Saturday. Tony Simon and Charlie Cook are going to be along for the Bullet, the weekend edition, and good luck keeping that one on the rails. So come join us for during the week, and come join me next Saturday. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for commenting, and we'll see you next time.